Now, let's look at the impact during inspiration and expiration, what's happening to blood pressure and heart rate during inspiration and expiration. When we take a deep breath, we said that when we contract the diaphragm, according to Boyle's law, when we take a deep breath, we are pulling the diaphragm down, and volume is inverse to pressure. So we are increasing volume and decreasing pressure. So the thoracic pressure decreases during inspiration. During inspiration, the thoracic pressure decreases. What does this mean? This will now lead to a tremendous pressure gradient between the thorax and the dependent veins or the periphery. Because of this, we will now, because of this pressure gradient, have a massive venous return to the lung. Because of this pressure gradient, blood rushes into the lung. At this point, this is also good because I'm inspiring. I want the blood in my lung to receive the oxygen that comes in during inspiration. So therefore, this leads to a temporary pooling of blood in the lung during inspiration. If the blood is temporarily pooled in the lung during inspiration, that means that flow to the left side of the heart, the left atrium, is momentarily decreased. Because flow to the left side of the heart is momentarily decreased during inspiration, that means that flow to the left ventricle during inspiration is decreased. If flow is decreased, then cardiac output is momentarily decreased during inspiration. This will now lead to a momentarily drop in blood pressure. So when you inspire, during that inspiration, blood pressure would fall. That's why it's important when you're taking a patient's blood pressure, make sure he's calm. Don't take the blood pressure when he's taking a deep inspiration. It can give you a 10 millimeter mercury difference in the pressure during deep inspiration because of this phenomenon. Now, as the blood pressure falls, we know that we have an immediate reflex. The baroreceptors, immediate reflex. I will have now, during inspiration, a reflex transient increase in heart rate. This is called the paradoxical fall in pressure during inspiration. Of course, we will expect the opposite to occur during expiration, which will explain why during expiration, now when I expire, the pressure in my thorax will now increase, so therefore the blood is milked and pumped from the lung into the left heart and into the system. So during expiration, the blood pressure goes up and heart rate falls, reflex. This paradoxical movement of the blood pressure must be appreciated. Now, what will happen if we do Valsalva? Let's just talk about Valsalva for a moment on this. Of course, you know what's Valsalva. Valsalva, you take a deep breath, you close your glottis, and you squeeze all of your abdominal muscles, all of the muscles that will collapse the lung, your diaphragm, intercostal. Now, don't try this right now. All sorts of embarrassing things can happen. Wait until you go home. Now, if you take a deep breath, and we are going to have Valsalva. All right, just go with me, and I want, don't try it right now. We are closing the glottis, and we are squeezing the lung. The air cannot escape. So we are pretty much creating a pressure cooker there in the system. The exam would ask two things. How will this affect blood pressure and heart rate? Now, Valsalva, in the beginning, you take a deep breath. So we said, when you take a deep breath in the beginning, as you inhale, you are pooling blood in the lung. And therefore, in the beginning, you will have a fall in blood pressure and a rise in heart rate. But later in Valsalva, as you now are squeezing and keeping, what will happen? Blood pressure will go up. The blood pressure goes up because now you are squeezing and you're milking blood from the lung into the heart. Heart rate will then decrease. Now as you continue the Valsalva, keeping pressure, and I'll put this at the end, towards the end of Valsalva. You've seen a child, especially in shopping, maybe you when you were a child, when you want something in the supermarket, you will threaten your mom that you will hold your breath until she buys it for you. And sometimes, very often, mom will yield and submit. Very often the child will say, I will hold my breath until I turn blue, mom, if you don't buy this. Well, for me, I don't really submit. I sometimes challenge the child. The last time you did it, you were blue. Can you change color and turn green today? In that way, you don't submit to this sort of manipulation by the child. Now, when you're doing Valsalva, what happens? You've seen children done it, you've done it. As we take the deep breath and we keep the thorax under pressure, the changes we said in the beginning, the blood pressure falls. Later, the blood pressure rises, but as you continue keeping the pressure in the system, you're not letting the air out. So the thorax continue prolong to be a high pressure system. And as you continue to keep the pressure in the thorax high, then this in the end would lead to a decrease in venous return to the lung because of the pressure gradient being lost from the peripheral vessels to the lung. Now, what will happen now? This would lead to a decreased flow to the heart. This decreased flow to the heart will eventually cause the blood pressure to now start to fall. And the child and heart rate will then start to be very rapid. So if we map it, we can say if this is normal, at this point, we have inspiration, and we said when inspiration in the beginning, that's when you're starting the Valsalva, the blood pressure would fall. So we will do something like this. The blood pressure falls, but the heart rate will be faster. Then later, we said that the blood pressure will go up, and the heart rate becomes slower. And then towards the end of Valsalva, because you're keeping the pressure in the system, so venous return now is getting less and less and less, the pressure falls. And when the pressure falls, now the person goes into tachycardia, and if the person keeps that up, can faint. So this represents, we can say, the eventual changes along in a patient who, as it affects heart rate and blood pressure in terms of using the Valsalva maneuver.